Chapter 34. Miss Thornhill entered the meeting house, where another security checkpoint waited. This one was more thorough, manned by a plainclothes guard with an earpiece who gave her bag a glance and waved a scanner over her coat. He offered a practiced smile as she passed. From the outside, the building still looked like it was barely standing, its crumbling facade and moss-covered shingles a deliberate aesthetic choice, preserving its colonial-era charm. But inside, it was another world entirely. The interior had been expanded and renovated for the exhibition. Bright museum lighting bathed the clean, white gallery walls, modular partitions that allowed curators to rotate or rearrange displays. Along these walls were original documents mounted under glass, delicate fragments of 400-year-old parchment, remarkably preserved. Wednesday Addams' floor plan sketches of Nevermore hung in one corner, with annotations outlining defensive escape routes and shadowed stairwells. Another section displayed her hand-drawn lesson plans, rigorous and orderly, interwoven with botanical diagrams and sharp-lined alchemical symbols. Field journals were laid out open, their pages filled with both flora and fauna sketches, pressed herbs, and scribbled medicinal notes in archaic Latin and Old English. A few visitors gasped aloud at the complexity of it all. "I can't believe she was only 16 when she wrote these," whispered a young outcast woman with pink hair and iridescent pupils, her fingertips hovering reverently over the glass. "She mapped out a whole school." "And field combat drills," said another, his voice low with awe. "At 16. That's what I was doing at 16, playing Grim Hex and failing potions class." Clusters of visitors, normies, outcasts, scholars, and bloggers alike stood shoulder to shoulder, murmuring praise, their eyes wide with reverence. A historian live streaming from the scene pointed her phone at a parchment leaf with a faded sketch of the Nevermore courtyard. She revolutionized how we think about early outcast infrastructure. Her work was decades ahead of her time. The woman said into her mic Wednesday Addams wasn't just a healer, she was a visionary. Miss Thornhill's eye twitched barely. She said nothing, but her posture stiffened as she made her way through the exhibit, ignoring the hushed admiration pooling around her. The centerpiece stood prominently behind a red velvet rope, a charcoal portrait of Goody and Wednesday Addams. Under the dim spotlight, the figures looked almost alive. Both wore the somber garb of the 1620s. One sister in black, the other in pale gray, mirror images with long braids and hollow gazes. Goody clutched a spellbook with fingers nearly skeletal in detail. Wednesday's hand rested loosely at her side, and above her shoulder, a disembodied hand hovered midair in a ghostly gesture. Below the portrait, encased in glass, was a weathered leather-bound book, its cover nearly identical to the one Wednesday held in the picture. Faded gold leaf barely clung to its spine. To the right of the sister's portrait was an even rarer artifact, the original terms of surrender signed by the Normie Council after Crackstone's defeat. The ink had faded in places, but the signatures remained proof of what once was. Miss Thornhill's gaze drifted left, where a massive oil painting occupied the entire far wall. It was a historical tableau, a chaotic, yet strangely composed scene of the final negotiation between normies and outcasts. The long wooden table stretched across the center of the frame, flanked on either side by furious figures mid-debate. Some pointed, others argued with open mouths, caught forever in the artist's brushstrokes. But at the heart of the painting, everything stilled. Wednesday Addams sat calmly at the center, head bent, transcribing onto parchment. Her expression was placid, unfazed. Even her pigtails were painted with unshakable precision. Beside her stood Tyler Galpin, leaning forward as if speaking passionately. One hand pressed into the table, the other mid-gesture, animated, but warm. Behind them loomed three more figures, Goody Addams, holding a heavy black tome to her chest, her stare intense, Petunia, arms crossed and bemused, and Marcus, regal and composed, his ghostly pallor striking beneath his hooded cloak. But just beyond the door, half-shrouded in shadow, stood Joseph Crackstone, watching them with a glint of venom in his narrowed eyes. A small crowd stood gathered before it. "I never knew they got this close to peace before it all collapsed," said one normie tourist. "The Addams girl, Friday, was the real deal. She would have changed everything," another agreed. "If Crackstone hadn't." "Ugh. Don't even say his name," muttered a teen outcast girl wearing a dark velvet cape. "The man was a xenophobic maniac." "Absolutely," said a normie man beside her. "You can tell in the painting. He's literally lurking in the background like a villain in a soap opera." Miss Thornhill's head turned slightly at the remark, her eyes narrowing in silence. She took a step closer to the painting, as though scrutinizing every detail, not out of awe, but calculation. From behind her, a pair of outcast bloggers stood whispering near the framed surrender parchment. "She died way too young. She would have been one of the greatest witches of our time if Crackstone hadn't murdered her. And Tyler too, he gave up everything." Miss Thornhill's jaw tensed. But again, she said nothing. Instead, she walked on, her footsteps echoing quietly on the polished floors as she headed deeper into the meeting house. After wandering through the halls of the exhibition, Miss Thornhill found herself once more in front of the charcoal portrait of Goody and Friday Addams. She stood still, her head tilted slightly as she examined the twin figures, both immortalized in shades of black, gray, and the suggestion of something far deeper than ink or paper. Her gaze lowered, settling on the glass case beneath them. The old spellbook inside looked worn, almost brittle, as if it might disintegrate if anyone dared to touch it. Its leather cover was cracked with age, the corners curled and darkened by time. "Miss Thornhill," a voice called lightly. She turned. Mayor Walkner approached, dressed in his usual rumpled blazer and town hall pin. He gave a genial smile, though his eyes flicked to the glass case nervously. "I didn't expect to see you here again," he said. "What brings you to the exhibition today?" Miss Thornhill returned the smile, calm and pleasant. "Oh, just paying my respects. I find it humbling to stand before Friday Addams' manuscripts. Though I must admit, I'm always terrified I might breathe too hard and set off an alarm." The mayor chuckled, his expression becoming sheepish. "Tell me about it. They put me in charge of safeguarding these artifacts, and I've barely slept since. If anything gets damaged or worse, goes missing, I'll have the entire Addams family breathing down my neck with a team of lawyers." Miss Thornhill laughed softly, her voice dry. "Lucky for you, the only person who ever dared take anything was Wednesday Addams. And she returned it, eventually." Walkner groaned. "Don't remind me. Goody's journal. She just took it. No warning, no paperwork. If it had been anyone else, the Addamses wouldn't have had their lawyers knocking down City Hall's door before sundown. Frankly, we're all grateful it was Wednesday." "She never asks for permission," Miss Thornhill said, her smile lingering. "But at least she has taste." They stood there for a moment, both staring at the spellbook beneath the glass. Around them, the exhibit bustled. Visitors were taking photos, whispering, pointing at things as docents led small tours. A few younger outcasts gathered around a digital model of Nevermore's architecture. "Exhibit's been a real success," the mayor said, folding his arms. "Jericho's buzzing. Even the old stone monument is trending again. You wouldn't believe how many people have been taking selfies with it." "Yes," Miss Thornhill replied, her tone thoughtful. "It's nice to see the town alive. And every time I come here, I notice something new in Friday's manuscripts, little annotations in the margins, a sketch hidden between pressed herbs. It's a shame the Addams family wants to pull them from public view." The mayor let out a breath. "Don't remind me. They want to haul everything back to their personal vaults. Wednesday calls them dusty libraries like it's a curse." Miss Thornhill's smile turned sharp. "She's not wrong." The mayor laughed at that, gave her a friendly nod, and excused himself to greet a city council member near the stairwell. "Well, I'll let you enjoy the exhibit." As he walked away, Miss Thornhill's expression slowly changed. She stepped closer to the glass, her hands behind her back. Her eyes narrowed, not at the portrait this time, but at the journal beneath it. Goody's journal. The weather vane was buzzing with life. Tourists packed every corner of the cafe, many still wearing their Pilgrim World tags or clutching souvenir maps. Miss Thornhill entered with her usual grace, scanning the room until she spotted him, Tyler, sitting alone at a small table by the window, stirring a now lukewarm coffee. She didn't hesitate. "Tyler," she said smoothly, pulling out the chair across from him. "How lovely to see you here." He looked up, not surprised, but clearly not thrilled either. "Miss Thornhill, you've been hard to find these days. I would have thought you'd be vacationing perhaps with the Addams family. Alaska this time of year must be brisk." He looked down at his cup, voice flat. "I was invited, but my dad took my passport and the plane tickets Wednesday gave me." Oh, Miss Thornhill's brows lifted, the smile on her lips not quite reaching her eyes. "That's a shame. She went through all that trouble." He didn't respond. She leaned forward slightly. "So how did she find the time to tutor you for finals, HM? Last I heard, Weems had her tutoring half the school." He gave a small shrug. "She did it between sessions. Whenever she could." "Impressive. Though not surprising," Miss Thornhill said, her tone light but probing. "She's always had a gift for time management." Tyler sipped his coffee, not offering more. "What grades did you end up getting?" she asked suddenly. He glanced at her, hesitant. "All A's and B's." "Oh, that's wonderful," she said brightly. "So did her students, the ones she tutored, I mean. She really has a knack for teaching, doesn't she?" He nodded once. Miss Thornhill tilted her head, fingers drumming lightly on the table. "I would have assumed your father might have let you go as a reward for such good grades. To think Wednesday did all that just so you could go with her. Such a shame." She paused, watching his reaction. His jaw tensed slightly. "I hope she's still having fun up there," she added, voice soft but needling. "Have you gotten a chance to talk to her?" "No," he said, his voice low, almost a grunt. "There's no cell service where they're at." "That's a shame," she said, the faintest trace of satisfaction flickering in her expression. "I suppose you'll have to wait until the fall semester to see or hear from her again, then." Tyler stood up suddenly, grabbing his jacket off the back of the chair. "I've gotta go." "Of course," she said quickly, rising just a beat behind him. "You know, I've always admired that connection you and Wednesday share. So loyal. So private." He didn't answer. Just walked off without another word. She watched him disappear through the cafe doors and then slowly made her way back to the exhibit. Her gaze, however, had sharpened, and the smile on her lips had all but vanished. The woods behind Jericho were still damp from last night's rain, the trees heavy with dew, and the sky above dimming to a bruised purple as the sun began to set. Despite the public warnings posted all around the trail entrance, caution, bear sightings reported, no hiking permitted, Miss Thornhill stepped over the chain barrier and pressed forward, her eyes following the faint shape ahead. She had seen him earlier, just at the edge of town, Tyler, slipping away from the back of the weather vane with a determined gait and a backpack slung over his shoulder. Now she trailed him in secret. He moved with the practiced ease of someone who had done this before, weaving through trees and rocks, headed deeper into the dense forest near the old quarry. Her instincts told her this wasn't just a hike. Eventually, he stopped her right at the mouth of a shadowed cave half hidden by wild brush. She crouched low behind a ridge of ferns, heart pounding as he dropped the backpack and began to undress, methodically folding his clothes and setting them aside. She should have looked away. She didn't. His spine tensed, shoulders twitching violently before the bones beneath his skin began to ripple. The sound was grotesque. A sickening crunch as ligaments stretched and bones cracked, reshaping. His hands, once human, swelled into claws, thickened and mottled with coarse fur. His back hunched, vertebrae protruding along his spine like the ridges of a beast. Veins bulged across his temples, his jaw elongating into a snarling snout lined with jagged teeth. And then the hide stood in Tyler's place. Grotesquely tall, hunchbacked, with pallid gray-blue skin taut over powerful muscles. Its limbs were too long, its fingers ending in hooked talons that twitched with primal hunger. Its eyes, enlarged, feral, glowing faintly, scanned the forest with animal precision. There was something unnervingly insectoid in its posture, like a mantis about to strike, and yet something deeply mammalian too, as if cobbled together from nature's worst ideas. Tyler, the hide, lurched forward and sniffed the air. He was hunting. His nostrils flared, teeth bared in a low growl as he bounded into the undergrowth. Twigs cracked underfoot. A squirrel screeched in panic before being snatched midair and silenced in an instant. Miss Thornhill remained perfectly still. She knew just enough to know what not to do. The hide, as whispered in outcast lore, had heightened senses, especially of smell and hearing. Fast, savage, territorial, and above all, dangerously reactive to fear. If she made even the slightest noise or broke into a run, she'd be dead within seconds. She reached into her coat slowly, pulling out the crushed petals of nightshade and a lavender sachet she always kept in her pocket. As she remembered that strong masking herbs can confuse a hide's scent tracking, she rubbed the powder across her wrist and neck, holding her breath as the creature suddenly stiffened. It had caught something, her. The hide's head snapped in her direction, chest heaving. She turned and crept backward as quietly as she could, weaving behind a tree, then another, slipping into a small hollow downwind from the cave. The hide crashed through the trees, roaring now, sniffing the air in confusion as the scent trail split, some lingering near the cave, the rest lost in the damp earth and crushed herbs. She heard him snarl in frustration before the footsteps vanished deeper into the woods. Only then did she run. Branches whipped her arms. She stumbled over roots. Her coat tore, her breath tore with it, but she didn't stop until the trees thinned and the lights of Jericho shimmered beyond the tree line. At last, she collapsed behind the corner of the abandoned barn, gasping for breath, sweat mingling with the crushed herbs still clinging to her skin. She glanced behind her, nothing. She was safe. For now. But back in the woods, the hide was in turmoil. He had tasted the thrill of the hunt and the shame of being seen. Somewhere inside the monster, Tyler remembered Wednesday's voice, sharp and cold as iron. Don't let anyone see you lose control or see your monster form unless you're prepared to dig a proper grave. His claws curled inward. Miss Thornhill didn't just see a monster. The hide's hands moved with mechanical precision, grinding beans, steaming milk, topping a cappuccino with just the right swirl of foam. Tourists milled around the weather vane, cluttering the air with the clatter of ceramic and meaningless chatter. His body wore Tyler's face, but it was him behind the eyes now. Tyler was buried somewhere deeper, lulled and muted. The hide was sharper, quicker, hungry, and, for once, wide awake. He hadn't felt this in months, not since 1620s Jericho, when blood meant justice and suspicion could be silenced with a blade. There, he had roamed the forests for days with Wednesday's blessing, eliminating threats, planting fear in the hearts of men who fancied themselves witch hunters. The smoke, the screams, the satisfaction, it had been bliss. But here? Lattes and tourists. Modernity was a leash, and Wednesday was the one holding it. She tolerated him now, barely. Only on her terms. Tyler had to be the one in control. The hide got the scraps nights in the woods, brief flashes of freedom to hunt deer and foxes under the guise of bear attacks. Her reasoning was annoyingly sound. No witnesses, no reports, no investigations. Only animals. Keep it clean. No grave digging in this century, she'd said. And for now he obeyed. But someone had seen him, and that someone was still breathing. He couldn't let that stand. Which is why, after his shift, he made a stop at the sheriff's station. He lingered near the vending machine, sipping the coffee he made himself, a perfect excuse to eavesdrop on the heated voices coming from Donovan's office. "We should have shut the trails down yesterday," Donovan snapped. "This isn't a maybe." A tourist or hiker reports movement, strange sounds, claw marks, blood on the rocks, and now we've got a missing dog and shredded deer carcass outside city limits. And no eyewitnesses, Mayor Walker shot back. His voice was tight. "You want to cancel the biggest event Jericho's had in years over scattered fur and animal tracks? You said that in April," Donovan growled. Then a hiker turned up dead near the gorge. Mauled. "You said it was a fluke, some rogue bear. And I played along. But I won't keep sweeping this under the rug. Someone's gonna die again." "And what do you want me to do?" the mayor snapped. "Tell the press we've got a monster on the loose? You want headlines saying, 'Which trial exhibition linked to serial killer?' Because we'll lose every tourist and donation we've got in one day." "I don't care about the money." "I do," the mayor barked. "Jericho depends on this. We need this. You want to scare people away with stories about a thing that probably isn't even human? You don't even have a suspect." "Not yet. But if I find one claw mark near town or another body shows up, I will shut this town down myself. With or without your approval." The Hyde sipped his coffee, jaw tight. So they weren't sure. That was good. The body from spring break still passed as a bear attack. No recent deaths, just animal corpses, and normies didn't get worked up over dead raccoons. He'd been careful. Wednesday had made him careful. He hated how right she was. But this wasn't about guilt or logic. This was about control. Someone saw him in the woods. Someone escaped. And if Wednesday ever found out, he'd let that person live. Don't let anyone see you lose control or see your monster form unless you're prepared to dig a proper grave. The words echoed like a sentence. She'd meant them. If the person who saw him was an outcast, fine. They knew better. They had secrets of their own, just like him. One freak seeing another freak could be managed, contained. Outcasts had reasons not to talk. But if it was a normie, just some idiot tourist or clueless townie hiking alone in the wrong place at the wrong time, he'd have to silence them. No mercy. No hesitation. He'd done it before. He crushed the paper cup in his hand and smiled at the sound of it. Time was running out. The exhibition would end soon. And someone out there still knew his secret. Chapter 35. After that brutal chase in the woods, Miss Thornhill knew better than to test fate again. She hadn't slept right since. No more isolated hikes, no detours through the trees, not even a walk back to her car alone after sundown. Wherever she went, she stayed among the crowd. Today, it was Pilgrim World, packed with tourists, the air filled with camera clicks, overpriced kettle corn, and colonial cosplay. She stood in the thick of it, hidden in plain sight. The Hyde couldn't sniff her out here, not through layers of sweat, sunscreen, and fryer oil. She made sure to switch perfumes daily, even changed shampoos, tossed out her forest-worn boots. No trace left behind. No scent trail to follow. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to awaken the Hyde. She'd spent years preparing, watching him, studying him. She was the one meant to stoke the hatred, trigger the transformation. She had it all planned. Isolate the boy, feed him lies about the outcasts, twist his grief into rage. Then get him alone, frighten him, hurt him, drive him over the edge until the monster clawed its way to the surface. But the monster had already awakened, and it wasn't hers. That reality was unraveling her. She bit the inside of her cheek, staring out at the milling crowd, but seeing none of them. Her eyes flicked toward the nearby information booth where a laminated sign announced the star of the exhibition, the lost manuscripts of Friday Addams, on loan from the Addams family vault. She fought down a wave of frustration. Was it Wednesday? It had to be. The two of them were practically joined at the hip all last semester. But she'd watched them closely, and there was nothing suspicious, nothing controlling. If anything, they looked like your run-of-the-mill moody couple. No strange orders, no covert meetings. Just sarcasm, banter, a little awkward hand-holding. Yet the evidence was piling up. The surge in dead animals in the area didn't begin until after Wednesday left town for the summer. So it couldn't have been her triggering the hide lately, right? Her mind drifted to that conversation with Tyler last spring break, when Wednesday wasn't around. He'd snapped. His voice had gone low and cold and full of something primal when he told her she's mine. And then, a body was found. Mangled. Unrecognizable. Tyler had looked just as stunned as anyone else. Played the concerned boyfriend well, fretting over Wednesday's safety. But maybe that was the slip. Maybe he wasn't playing. Maybe he didn't even know. Or maybe there's something I'm not seeing, she thought grimly. One thing was certain, she needed answers. And fast. Her eyes zeroed back in on the centerpiece of the exhibit, the glass case containing Goody Addams' journal. She could almost hear the pages whispering to her, beckoning. That journal might not hold anything about the hide, but it held something else. Something she needed. Desperately. What that something was, she wasn't ready to tell anyone. Not yet. But it was important. Urgent. She'd waited too long to act. If the Addams family got there first, it was over. The case was under heavy protection. Security was everywhere. Cameras, motion sensors, metal detectors, uniformed staff at every corner. The Addams family would be arriving soon to collect the artifacts. Once they did, it would be gone. This was her window. Her only chance. She narrowed her eyes, brain already shifting gears. She needed a plan. A distraction. A way past the scanners. A fake ID, perhaps? A swap? Something theatrical. Bold. She had to focus. Forget Tyler. Forget the hide for now. That journal was her new primary objective. And she didn't have long. Miss Thornhill stepped inside the weather vane and scanned the room. Tourists buzzed in every corner, crowding around for coffee and pastries. Her eyes landed on a booth near the window. Sheriff Galpin and Mayor Walker were seated there, speaking in hushed but firm tones. She slid into a nearby booth, angled just right to listen and without drawing attention. I'm telling you, Walker, we need to pull 2 patrols from Pilgrim World. Just a few hours. There's something out in those woods, Sheriff Galpin said, voice tight with frustration. Mayor Walker didn't even look up from his coffee. And I'm telling you now, not when we're days away from wrapping the biggest event this town's hosted in years. You think I'm doing this for fun? Galpin snapped. I've seen what's left of those carcasses. This isn't a bear. Not even close. Yeah? Because all I see is a sheriff who's wasting his breath over some dead wildlife, Walker muttered. We haven't had a single human casualty since spring break. And if there's another one? What then? Galpin leaned forward. You'll still be worried about tourist dollars when we've got another corpse to explain? Walker gave a low, humorless laugh. Don't get dramatic, Donovan. You think this town can survive the PR storm if something goes missing from that exhibit? You know what the Addams family threatened if anything gets damaged or stolen. My office would be buried in legal hell before the press even cools down. So we sit on our hands while something tears through animals 5 miles from town? You wait. You wait 2 more days. Friday, they take their weird family heirlooms and get the hell out. Then we go full force, woods, patrols, dogs, whatever you want. But until then, not one uniform leaves Pilgrim World. You're gambling with people's lives, Galpin muttered, jaw tight. And you're gambling with the entire town's economy over a maybe. Walker's voice was flat. Just keep it together until the exhibition's over. Then you can hunt your monster. Miss Thornhill stood from her booth and exited the weather vane without a sound. She didn't need to hear more. As the final day of the exhibition wrapped up, the sheriff's station exploded with chaos. Phones rang off the hook, tourists reporting loved ones who hadn't returned from hikes the night before, frantic voices describing a beast sprinting upright through the woods. Sheriff Galpin didn't wait for confirmation. He pulled the Pilgrim World Patrol immediately. Lock it down, he barked into his radio. Full protocol. No one in or out. Across town, Miss Thornhill checked her watch. Right on schedule. At Pilgrim World, the security detail shifted into high alert, just as she intended. Guests were calmly escorted out of the exhibit, murmuring confusion and irritation as staff cited unexpected safety measures. Dressed in a crisp white and black Puritan costume, Miss Thornhill slipped through the narrowing crowd, blending in effortlessly. She passed by two security guards who barely glanced at her, her outfit matching the performers hired for the historical reenactments. They didn't see a threat. They saw a role player. Inside the meeting house, the air was still. Empty. This was the window. She moved fast, no wasted motion, no hesitation. Her heels clicked once against the wooden floor before she softened her steps. In the center of the room, behind a red velvet rope, stood the charcoal portrait of Goody and Friday Addams. Just beneath it, the black grimoire, sealed inside a pressure-locked glass case. Miss Thornhill pulled a small silver device from her sleeve, a compact pulse disruptor. Not military grade, but enough to momentarily short out the glass sensors without triggering a building-wide alert. Click! The light inside the case flickered. 1 beat. 2. She slid the glass back, reached in, and gripped the grimoire like it belonged to her. The sensors rearmed a fraction of a second too late. Then the alarm screamed. But by then, she was already moving. She didn't run. She walked with purpose, slipping behind a temporary partition meant to hide staging props. There, she stripped off the costume, revealing a sleek black turtleneck and jeans underneath. She pulled a beanie over her hair and tucked the grimoire into a hidden courier bag lined with lead to avoid detection. Outside, the chaos was mounting, security racing to the meeting house, sirens beginning to echo through the park. Miss Thornhill stepped out the back, unnoticed, and strolled past a maintenance crew wheeling trash toward the dumpsters. She dropped the costume inside one of them, doused it in lighter fluid, and tossed in a match without breaking stride. As soon as Miss Thornhill touched the grimoire, Wednesday Addams collapsed into her family's estate, thousands of miles away, caught in the vice grip of a psychic vision. The fire, the blood moon, Crackstone reborn. And Goody Addams, ghostly and solemn, standing tall beneath the burning sky with the grimoire in hand. Her voice rang out in verse, dark and prophetic. Friday's house was built with bone, stone and spell, not flesh alone. For centuries it has stood unshaken, but roots decay when vows are forsaken. The blood moon marks the serpent's tide, when kin grow blind with arms flung wide. Beware the smile that speaks in grace. Some demons wear an angel's face. The jackal jests, the hyde obeys. The raven mourns, the fire plays. Trust not the hand that serves you tea, for poison's sweet when wrapped in glee. The snake will slip past gate and door. In borrowed skin it's praised, adored. It wears the name of gardener's child, but bears the wrath of Crackstone's bile. When red moon climbs and veil grows thin, she'll raise the dead to cleanse our kin. The farmer sleeps, his hearth aglow, but ash shall fall where love did grow. For in 400 the wheel shall turn. If none take heed, the house shall burn. My Friday's blood must watch, must see, or fire will claim your legacy. Alaska. Late evening. The fire crackled low in the hearth. Snow tapped gently against the mansion's windows. The Addams family sat in quiet conversation, Morticia sipping from a porcelain cup, Gomez carving a small totem with a dagger, Pugsley trying to teach Thing to shuffle a deck of cards. Then a dull thud. Wednesday collapsed onto the floorboards, her teacup shattering beside her. Everyone froze. Her eyes rolled back, limbs stiff. A thin stream of blood trickled from her nose. Then, just as suddenly, her chest heaved, and she gasped awake, pupils blown wide. She blinked slowly, then sat upright with inhuman stillness. Goody's grimoire has been stolen, she said, voice completely flat, gaze locked on nothing. At the Pilgrim World exhibit. The room chilled further. Morticia set down her teacup with precision. Gomez leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Who?" he asked, but Wednesday didn't answer. Instead, she stood, wiping the blood from under her nose. Her hands trembled, barely noticeable, but Morticia caught it. So did Pugsley. Under a blood moon, Wednesday murmured, almost to herself, "Nevermore burns." The Addams family didn't speak. Chapter 36. Back at the exhibition, staff swept into the meeting house like bees disturbed from a hive. Radios crackled. Flashlights cut through the dim corners. Panic rippled in low murmurs as they scanned the exhibits, their eyes darting between priceless artifacts. Then someone shouted, "Case 17's been breached." The charcoal portrait of Goody and Friday Addams loomed above the now empty glass case. The black journal, the one that hadn't even been cataloged publicly, was gone. Hours later, Jericho's forest edge was flooded with red and blue strobe lights. Deputies combed the area with search dogs and infrared scopes. Sheriff Galpin stood with arms crossed, face stone-hard. He stared down the trailhead. Dispatch had received over 24 emergency calls. One witness claimed a man was screaming, dragged off into the brush by something with claws. Another said a beast was pacing the woods just beyond the ridge, stalking the trees like it owned them. And yet nothing. No blood. No footprints. No man. No beast. No one waving them down. Galpin scanned the tree line again. "We're being baited," he muttered under his breath, jaw tight. Something about this didn't sit right. Tyler, no, the hide, watched from across the street, hands stuffed in his hoodie pockets as a convoy of police cruisers peeled out of the parking lot, sirens wailing, lights flaring red and blue against the falling dusk of the setting sun. They were headed for the edge of the woods, his woods. The trailhead. His brow furrowed. What the hell's going on? He'd been low-key all summer. Kept his promise. No people, just animals. Just like Wednesday told him. He hadn't hunted in days, not since that last incident. He'd been too preoccupied trying to figure out who saw him. Someone had. He'd felt it. Eyes in the dark. The kind that knew what they were looking at. Normie? Outcast? Someone passing through? He didn't know. But he had to figure it out before Wednesday came back, or he'd be in the doghouse again. Or worse. He crossed the street toward the parking area at the trail entrance, where a couple of patrol cars still lingered. The police were out combing the forest, muttering into radios, questioning campers. His dad wasn't here, thankfully. He'd probably been sent somewhere else. Tyler loitered near the vending machine, pretending to scroll on his phone. One of the officers passed close. Call said it was a monster, the guy muttered to his partner. Dragging some guy into the woods. Weirdest thing. Tyler stiffened. The hide inside him stirred. But I didn't go hunting today. Then the radio on the cop's vest crackled. Unit 5, report back to Pilgrim World immediately. Artifacts been stolen from the exhibit. Repeat. High-value theft. Lock down the site. Tyler's jaw clenched. Inside his head, he and the hide said it in unison. Shit. Wednesday's family isn't gonna like this. The hide, still wearing Tyler's face, drifted through the chaos outside Pilgrim World like smoke. Police cruisers boxed in the entrance, red and blue sirens casting warped reflections across the colonial windows. Yellow tape flapped in the summer wind, slicing the scene into layers of keep-out. Locals and tourists buzzed around the perimeter, some stunned, others filming with their phones. Park staff were being corralled into corners for questioning. Their stories all matched. We thought we had time. It wasn't even closing yet. Then all the officers just bolted. Locked the whole park down without warning. I got it on video here, look. Tyler's eyes scanned everything, but it was the argument in front of the meeting house that pulled him in like a magnet. His father. And the mayor. Locked in a shouting match. 2 more days, Donovan. Mayor Walker barked, his face red. All you had to do was guard it for 2 more damn days. And ignore dozens of 911 calls about a monster in the woods? What would you have me do? Wait until someone ends up in a tree again? Sheriff Galpin snapped back. The hide slipped past them, Nobody noticed. Inside, the meeting house was half-shadowed. Cold. Still. Artifacts under glass cases stood like sentinels in the dark. Everything seemed intact until he reached the centerpiece. Goody and Friday Addams. A charcoal portrait, delicate and eerie, stared out from its ornate frame behind a velvet rope. Below it, an empty glass case sat gaping. Tyler froze. The grimoire was gone. His breath caught. That case had held Goody Addams' spellbook. Of all the things they could have stolen. Hey, Tyler. He turned. A young officer he vaguely knew stepped up. You can't be in here. Crime scene. Come on. Tyler raised his hands in surrender. Just curious. He walked out slow, brain racing. Outside, his dad spotted him and started toward him, clearly about to launch into a full-blown lecture, until Mayor Walker interrupted. Where's Wednesday Addams? Tyler paused. Still in Alaska. I've been trying to get a hold of her for days, but there's no cell signal where she is. Remote research thing. The mayor groaned, running a hand down his face. Forget it. We can't let this leak before her family finds out. Just find the damn book. He turned to Donovan again. I want a list of every tourist still staying in Jericho. Interview them. Check-ins, Airbnbs, bed and breakfasts, all of it. But it was too late. As Mayor Walker feared, the wildfire had already started. Online headlines lit up like sparks. Outcast artifact stolen on final day of Pilgrim World exhibit. Historic Addams spellbook vanishes, mystery or cover-up? Monster sightings in Jericho hours before theft. The Hyde retreated to the shadows near the parking lot, chewing on the weight of what he'd just seen. Goody's grimoire was gone. And someone was playing a dangerous game. He just didn't know who yet. But he'd find out. Before Wednesday got back. Early morning, the next day. A motorcade of black, polished Chevy Suburbans pulled into the gravel lot outside the Jericho Sheriff's Station. The sun had barely crept over the treetops when a man in a perfectly pressed brown suit stepped out of the lead SUV, a slim leather briefcase in hand and Addams' black sunglasses on his face. The silver pin on his lapel bore the family crest, and Ouroboros wrapped around a coffin. He was tall, unfazed by the early hour, and when he entered the station, the room fell silent. Sheriff Donovan Galpin or Mayor Walker, the man asked, adjusting his cufflinks. Whichever of you is available. I represent the Addams family. Dalton Marrow, claims advisor and legal consultant for their historical insurance division. Two other similarly dressed attorneys stepped in behind him, each wheeling hardshell cases marked with the Addams family seal. Sheriff Galpin appeared first, weary from a sleepless night. Mayor Walker followed shortly behind, shirt wrinkled, tie loosened. They all gathered in the briefing room, and the blinds were quickly drawn. Dalton spoke first. As of last night, a registered colonial artifact, Goody Addams' original grimoire, was reported stolen from the Friday Addams exhibition, on display at Pilgrim World. The book was loaned to your town under a temporary custodial agreement after Nevermore Academy completed their portion of the exhibition. He opened his briefcase, pulled out a thin, gold-stamped document, and laid it flat on the table. I'm here to formally notify you that the Black Book was insured under a specific high-risk display policy for the amount of $9.7 million USD. That figure accounts for its confirmed age, magical folklore value, provenance, and family estate certification. The sheriff blinked. The mayor choked on his lukewarm coffee. Dalton didn't wait. And you should be thankful that none of Friday Addams' manuscripts, more than a dozen, were misplaced during the exhibit's transition. Those were valued at an average of $3.5 million each, due to their artistic rarity, coded language, and cultural weight in the Addams collection. He let that sink in. Had even one of them gone missing, your liability would be significantly worse. Combined with Goody's grimoire, the lawsuit could have escalated to over $52 million in total damages. The mayor swore under his breath. The sheriff just stared at the paper. Dalton closed the folder with an audible snap. This isn't just a family's keepsake. This was the centerpiece of a legal loan agreement, broken under your watch. Now, either you recover the artifact, or Jericho will be held accountable in court. We'll begin our own internal investigation starting today. He stood. Mayor Walkner shot the sheriff a look, panic, accusation, desperation all at once. We'll cooperate, Donovan said immediately. Yes, the mayor added. Of course. You have our full cooperation. Dalton offered a tight, polite smile. Good. Because the Addamses are watching. And they tend to take things personally. Word traveled fast. Faster than any normie news cycle. Faster than a police report could be filed. By the time the sun had set over Jericho, half the outcast world already knew. Goody Addams' original spellbook, an ancestral grimoire written in the old tongue, had been stolen. Not from Nevermore, but from Pilgrim World, where it had been on display during the Wednesday Addams exhibition. A theft on the final day. And people talked. What stunned everyone wasn't just that the artifact had been taken, it was the value. The Addams family's legal team had released a press statement confirming the journal had been officially appraised at $9.7 million USD. But that was only the beginning. Because the exhibition had also featured Wednesday Addams manuscripts, more than a dozen, and each one appraised at roughly $3.5 million. Had those been stolen as well, the total liability could have exceeded $56.9 million. And that didn't even include the charcoal portrait of Goody and Wednesday Addams, two young girls, standing side by side, drawn on aged parchment dating back nearly 4 centuries. That piece alone had been valued at $6.8 million USD. Had the thief taken that too, the town of Jericho would be staring down a potential total lawsuit of over $73 million. That singular portrait was the only known depiction of both sisters together and was considered by many magical historians to be irreplaceable. Fortunately, that hadn't gone missing. But barely. The portrait had been hanging next to the grimoire in the Pilgrim World display, under the same faulty protection spells and non-magical security measures. Whoever took the spellbook could have easily lifted the portrait too. The fact that they didn't was nothing short of a miracle. Back at Nevermore, most students were scattered across the globe on summer break. But as always, Outcast group chats stayed active. Eden Lethe, lounging alone in her summer sublet in Manila, dropped her phone when she read the appraised numbers. Literally. She was carrying that book around all semester, like it was a notebook. She scrolled back through old photos and found it, Wednesday at breakfast with the journal open beside her plate like it was morning reading. On a completely different continent, Ajax Petropoulos was crashing on a friend's couch in Berlin when he got the news. I saw it in her backpack, he muttered. Thought it was a sketchpad. That thing was just in her bag. Yoko texted from her family's tea temple in Kyoto. That thing was sitting in our main hall for 6 weeks with no guards. No cameras. No runes. Xavier, halfway through a summer residency in Madrid, shook his head. Do you realize how many magical collectors would kill for that book? Kill. Bianca, still in New Orleans visiting her siren cousins, couldn't believe what she was hearing. We had it in the library annex, right next to the janitor's mop sink. Principal Weems, in the middle of her sabbatical, was yanked out of bed by a 3 a.m. call from the Nevermore school board. Her first words were not printable. The Nevermore board convened remotely within the hour. Their reactions ranged from panic to prayer. Fortunately, since the exhibition had fully transferred to Pilgrim World weeks before, and the theft occurred after Nevermore's custodianship ended, they weren't legally liable. But that didn't stop the collective cold sweat. Back in Jericho, the real panic was just beginning. Sheriff Galpin and Mayor Walker had already been grilled by the Addams family's insurance agents the day before. The men in suits made it clear the journal had been loaned, not gifted, and it was covered by an airtight insurance policy. The town, the sheriff's department, and Pilgrim World itself were all now subjects of potential lawsuits. Charges could include negligent care of historic and magical property, breach of cultural artifact custody laws, lack of formal magical security measures, failure to maintain artifact loan agreement protocols. Donovan had a headache that wouldn't quit. The mayor looked like he was about to throw up. "Do you know what happens if the Addams sue the town?" he muttered. "They won't," Donovan said. "Not if we find the damn book. They could buy the town and shut it down," the mayor snapped. And they weren't wrong. Eden, still reeling from the price tags, checked the old student wealth database Nevermore kids used to joke about. The Addams family had land, vaults, equity. Some estimates place their holdings in the low billions. "She's been walking around all semester with $9 million in her backpack," Eden whispered. Wednesday freaking Addams. "She's gonna kill somebody," Ajax muttered from Berlin. Jericho Sheriff's Station, Temporary Incident Command. The conference room pulsed with tension. Charts, maps, and legal folders crowded the walls. Portable monitors flickered with security footage, satellite overlays, and dispatch logs. The room smelled of stale coffee and panic. Dalton Merrow, the Addams family's lead investigator, stood at the front, arms crossed over his tailored charcoal suit. He scanned the room. Sheriff Donovan Galpin, Mayor Walker, officers, insurance agents, museum staff, all waiting for the verdict. He spoke with razor-edge calm. "Let's walk through it." 12 separate 911 calls. All within 28 minutes. Fires. Domestic abuse. Carjackings. Every one of them fake. Sheriff Galpin stiffened. "We didn't have reason to doubt them. They were logged like any other." "That's the point," Merrow cut in, tapping a monitor. All 12 calls originated from the same geographic location, Northeast Jericho. Same cell tower. No environmental variance in the background. And the voice. He gestured to his assistant, who queued up an audio sample. A calm, female voice played. "Hello? I'm at the gas station. He has a gun. It glitched slightly." Then again. Each time, the voice was identical. AI generated, the tech confirmed. Mimicry software. Highly polished. No digital watermarking, which suggests black market origins. Whoever did this had the gear and the intent. Mayor Walker wiped sweat from his brow. "They set up a fake emergency net to pull your officers away from Pilgrim World." Merrow nodded. "And during that window, while the crowd was being evacuated from the Friday Addams exhibit." The footage played. A lone figure, dressed head to toe in black and white, moved with eerie grace through the cleared hallway. Face obscured. Movements methodical. She stopped at the center of the room. The glass case housing Goody Addams' grimoire. One quick twist of the wrist. The case clicked open. No alarms. She removed the entire grimoire, leather-bound, ancient, gleaming with protective sigils that were either bypassed or deactivated in advance. Then just like that, she turned and exited through the side door, untouched, unchallenged. She didn't even hurry, someone whispered. "She didn't need to," Merrow said coldly. Another agent, Kasha, stepped forward with the latest update. "We've completed a forensic cataloging of all artifacts still in the exhibit. Friday Addams manuscripts, intact. All of them verified. The dual portrait of Goody and Friday, untouched." She turned to the mayor and sheriff. "But the entire grimoire is gone. Not a page left." Sheriff Galpin muttered a curse under his breath. Jesus. Back in Jericho, the scent of burnt coffee and humidity clung to the sheriff's station. Dalton Merrow, sharply dressed and always 2 steps ahead, raised an eyebrow as his inbox pinged. "Certified mail from Washington," he muttered, tearing open the envelope with practiced fingers. Inside, a crisp legal letter, thick with formal language and thinly veiled threat. At the top was Adele Addams' law firm's crest, Addams and Bain, Washington, D.C. "To whom it may concern. On behalf of the Addams estate and the family's legal representatives, this notice formally informs all parties, Jericho's municipal government, Pilgrim World Historical Foundation, and the Sheriff's Department, that litigation proceedings have been placed on temporary hold. This decision comes in light of our client's generosity in extending a final deadline. If Goody Addams' stolen artifact, catalog no. A 13G is not recovered by the night of the upcoming lunar eclipse, a suit will be filed without further negotiation. The monetary damages sought remain at $9.7 million USD. This extension is not a reprieve, it is a countdown. We advise immediate coordination, transparency, and results. Regards, Adele Addams, ESQ. Dalton set the letter down slowly. So they're giving us time, generous. Later, at City Hall. Sheriff Galpin paced the mayor's office, letter in hand. Okay, I'm gonna say it. Why the hell the lunar eclipse? Why not just say, like, July 14th? Mayor Walker frowned. What is the next lunar eclipse, anyway? Dalton Marrow, who had been invited to interpret the legal language, smirked over his coffee. You're asking the wrong question, gentlemen. You should be asking, how many days do we have left? The mayor looked skeptical. Seriously? What's with the theatrics? It's the Addams family, Dalton replied. They don't do deadlines. They do prophecies, blood moons, ancient clocks. Honestly, you should be grateful it's not written in goat's blood. Sheriff Galpin exhaled. So when is it? Dalton pulled out his phone and checked. Next lunar eclipse. The mayor looked pale. 2.5 months to avoid a multi-million-dollar lawsuit. Dalton nodded. And to avoid being remembered as the idiots who lost a centuries-old cursed artifact that may or may not bring about supernatural destruction. You think they're bluffing? Galpin asked. Dalton raised an eyebrow. You ever try bluffing with a woman who keeps a guillotine in her living room? Galpin didn't answer. Dalton tipped his hat. I'd start looking. Immediately. I have a feeling they already are. And with that, he walked out, whistling just as thunder rolled in from the hills.